Hi, I'm Jaclyn.
And I'm Courtney, and this is Caffeinated Crimes.
Happy New Year. We hope you guys are enjoying your 2021 so far. It is still 2020 as we record this, so hopefully 2021 started and we didn't just start back over. I don't know. We'll see.
It just kept going. It just was like December 32nd, December 33rd,
Yep. It's like,
December
nope,
34th.
2020 is still here.
And that's the thing, is I'm like, I have a lot of hope about 2021, but then I'm like, what if it's even worse?
Yeah. I know. I saw someone the other day post about like, oh, I haven't seen anyone like making their comments about how 2021 is going to be their year. I'm like, yeah, nobody's doing that shit again.
No, we're just going to be respectful, and we're going to like understand time just needs her time, and we're going to,
Yes.
we're not going to like poke the beast. We're just going to chill.
I have hope for like the end of 2021, maybe middle. I don't know. I think at some point, I think we discussed this last week, but I think at some point in 2021 things will get better. Just not immediately.
Hopefully the vaccine is like actually going to work, and like
Yes.
long-term immunity, and maybe that will be like a good thing and not like backfire, and that way it's kind of like we'll all have a little bit of immunity, and hopefully COVID doesn't like mutate.
Yes, hopefully. Let's all hope for that. As you guys know, last week we released one of our older Patreon episodes so that Courtney and I could take a much needed vacation for Christmas, because this podcast has been going for 10 months now, something like that. And we never took a week off. So, we took that week off, and at this point we have not taken it yet, but I'm sure we enjoyed it.
Yes.
So
I'm sure future Courtney is really enjoying herself right now.
yes, exactly. So we hope you guys enjoyed that Patreon episode. Just a reminder, you can head on over there to get more episodes like that and, other fun goodies. But this is not a Patreon ad. We just wanted to recap that we hope you guys liked the bonus episode last week.
Yeah, definitely. But speaking of the podcast going for 10 months, our anniversary is coming up. Our little Caffeinated Crimes birthday is coming up. So we're going to have to think of something big to do for that. So
it was around this time last year that we actually started our planning and, buying equipment. And because we recorded 4 or 5 episodes before we released, I think, because we wanted to make sure we were ahead.
Yeah, we had 3 for sure, because we're like, okay, we're doing 3 on the release date.
Yeah.
And that was super stressful to try and research and record and edit and all that 3. And I was like, oh my God, I can't do this. I'm never going to have any free time. And sometimes I still feel that way. But
yes. Which is hence why we took a break last week, because things were just piling up and there was a lot going on.
Yeah,
so
it was very narrow windows to do things. And we're like, you know what? They'll understand. They love us, I think. I hope.
Exactly. I hope so. I hope you guys are still here after 10 months because you love us. So yeah, it's been about a year since we started planning, recording, doing all the stuff for the first few episodes, and then of course our first release date is coming up. So if you guys have any suggestions or ideas for a special anniversary episode, let us know, because we definitely want to do something fun, different. Maybe we'll do an extra episode. I don't know. We'll see.
Something, for sure, yeah. Or, if you guys want it to be a little unconventional and not a case, or a different kind of case, or if you want to ask us a bunch of questions and we'll answer it as a bonus that week or something. I don't know, we can figure it out. We'll figure out what to do.
As you guys know, we are open to lots of things, so definitely let us know what you guys think.
Yeah, for sure.
So speaking of letting us know what you guys think, this week's episode is a listener suggestion. You guys know that we love those, so please send them our way. We're getting through our list, so we're trying to kind of get those done soon after they come in, so we can make sure that they come out for you guys, especially since we record a few weeks ahead of time. We want to make sure you guys are able to hear it fairly soon after you request it. And of course, with the holidays, we had a bit of a delay with suggestions because we wanted to do some holiday-themed ones. But this was a suggestion by our listener, Catherine. Catherine is a Patreon, and she is amazing and wonderful, and we love her. So thank you so much for this suggestion, Catherine. We hope you appreciate the research that we put into this episode.
Yes. Thank you, Catherine. You're the best. We love you.
Yes. So our sources for this episode were the Salt Lake City Tribune, the Deseret News. I'm not sure if I pronounced that correct. I hope so.
I'm not sure.
The Generation Y podcast, We also got some recordings from some 911 calls that happened in this case from the University of Utah News. And we're not going to play them for this episode because they are pretty long and there's a lot of pauses. And so we're just going to link them in the show notes so you guys can go listen to them if you want to. On October 22nd, 2018, 21-year-old University of Utah student Lauren McClusky was murdered outside her dorm room by her ex-boyfriend. He had stalked and harassed her for weeks, and more than 20 reports had been made to both campus and Salt Lake City police departments in the months leading up to her death. Her murder was tragic and 100% preventable. So, Lauren Jennifer McCluskey was born on February 12, 1997, to Jill and Matt McCluskey. The family moved from Berkeley, California to Pullman, Washington when she was 18 months old because both of her parents had been offered tenure positions at Washington State University. So, her mom, Jill, was an economics professor, and her dad, Matt, was a physics professor. They also had a son named Ryan and 2 cats named Victory and Fuzzy, which are just amazing cat names. So as a child, Lauren was really shy with strangers, but she was a really strong athlete. And at the age of 8, she broke 3 records in 3 track events, the high jump, long jump, and 400-meter run in one day at a junior Olympics competition in Washington State. But in interviews, she would usually deflect the focus away from herself and really focus on the success of her teammates and the support of her family. Like, she was just very, humble, and she didn't like a lot of attention, and she really wanted to talk about what others had done for her. And she consistently set high standards for herself, and she was really disappointed when she didn't meet them, but she was a very resilient child, so she would just bounce back and then just keep working harder to work on her goals. And at the age of 9, she qualified for nationals, and at Pullman High School, she set the record for the 100-meter hurdles. Lauren really loved animals and volunteered at the Humane Society. She would help to socialize cats and make them more adoptable, and she did graduate from high school with honors and volunteered at the Special Olympics during her time there. Lauren also volunteered at a retirement community where she organized a picture directory. So she basically interviewed the people who lived there and put together their stories into a book, so each resident got a copy of it. So it was just a huge hit, which just sounds like so cool and such a great idea.
Yeah.
The Generation Y podcast says a lot about how much her life was really just dedicated to helping others and connecting others and just making a difference in her community.
Yeah, she was definitely a person who just, tried to make other people's lives better. She just was constantly volunteering and, just trying to help people and just trying to make the world a better place, basically.
Yeah, definitely. So in the fall of 2015, Lauren moved to Salt Lake City to attend the University of Utah. And again, she was always really shy, and this continued when she entered college. She had grown up in a small town, and she was now at a school with 32,000 other students, so it was just really overwhelming. And she was also intimidated by the older girls on her track team. And her roommate and friend Alex said that she would often walk around campus with her head down and just didn't really speak much to others during their freshman year. But Lauren started to change as she approached her senior year of college, and she was suddenly more outgoing and confident, and she started sharing more of her life with her friends and started routinely going to karaoke night at a bar in downtown Salt Lake City called Cheers to You. And Lauren was really looking forward to graduation and hoping to move somewhere warm like San Diego, where she would get her own apartment and start her life after college. Then on September 2nd, 2018, Lauren McCluskey went to a Salt Lake City bar called London Bell with Alex, her friend and roommate, and she was immediately attracted to the bouncer, who escorted them to a table when the bar was really busy and they weren't able to find other seats. And he continued to check on them throughout the night, and she could tell that he was into her too. So Lauren decided to do something that she had never done before, and she gave this strange man her phone number. He introduced himself as Sean Fields, and she was really excited that he texted her that very night, and they made plans to go to a climbing gym the next afternoon. For their first real date, he gave her roses and took her to dinner to meet his work friends. And Lauren immediately called her mom to tell her about him, and her mom could tell that this was different from the other boys that she had seen before, and that she was really infatuated with him. So Sean told her that he was 28 years old, he was from New York, and working part-time as a bouncer to pay his way through community college to finish his computer science degree. So Lauren's mom was a little worried that Sean was 28, but she didn't say anything because Lauren was an adult now and she would be graduating college soon. So it's what's the point of really going there? She's going to see this guy if she wants to,
That's what my mom always said. She was I never tried to be do not do this, because I was a teenager once, and I know that means you're going to immediately go and do that thing.
Exactly. And it's she's living, several states away, she's on her own. like, you can express your concerns, but is that really going to make a difference? You know?
Yeah.
And obviously, hindsight is 20/20, but typically, as a parent, it's like, well, I have to let them make their own mistakes. Like, this may be a mistake, but it'll be okay and she'll learn from it. It's typically what happens in this situation. So Sean visited her often at her residence hall, and he quickly built friendships with the other students in the building as well. And Alex was really excited for her friend, but then she started to have some odd feelings about him. So he was 28 years old and spent almost every night in Lauren's dorm room sharing her twin bed with her. So, like, did this guy not have his own place? Like, at 28 years old, like, you don't really want to be crashing in a dorm room, you know?
Yeah.
So about a week into their relationship, Lauren started making comments about Sean telling her what she should wear to the bar or whether or not she was allowed to invite friends to the bar that night. So kind of some weird comments about things that he's trying to say kind of in a controlling manner. And Sean would get upset if Lauren didn't text back immediately, and Lauren started stopping whatever she was doing to text him back before he got angry. If she was driving, she'd have to pull over to text him back immediately and then get back on the road. You know, he would get really upset if it was even like a 10-minute delay until she got where she was going. He also didn't want her going out to bars, parties, or even other friends' houses because other men would be there. And one time her phone died, and he called her screaming because he thought that she was cheating on him. And he told her that he was this way because his previous girlfriend had cheated on him and he had trust issues.
I just want to give a little piece of relationship advice here.
Yes.
That is not an excuse to be treating someone like that. And I understand, like, it's hard to recover from past traumas in relationships, but it's not fair to bring that on to your current partner. Like,
exactly.
You can't be like, oh, well, my ex-boyfriend cheated on me, and so I know you're cheating on me. Like, no, like, she's given you no reason not to trust her. Like,
exactly.
And if you can't trust people or her, then you got your own issues you need to work out.
Yes, that is a you problem that you need to figure out and not something that you need to project onto your new relationship. So, that's Jaclyn and Courtney's relationship advice corner.
Let us know if you want more. I got you. I can give you my uneducated thoughts.
We got you guys. So he bought her pepper spray and tried to encourage her to buy a gun because he was worried about other men hitting on her. So that's not normal behavior.
Not just for safety because, you know, women get attacked. Because what if a man hits on you? Okay, yeah, then you say, no, thank you, go on.
Yeah, you don't need to shoot him, usually.
No.
So Alex was getting concerned about his behavior, and so she tried to make some, like, lighthearted comments about him being controlling, but she was afraid to push her too far because she knew controlling men were likely to manipulate their girlfriends into cutting off all contact with their friends, and so she was really worried about that happening. So she's like, I don't want to push too far and risk losing her altogether. So she tried to just kind of make some lighthearted comments, but, you know, nothing too damning to try to hurt that relationship between them. So on September 26th, Lauren called Alex and some of their other friends saying that Sean would not let her hang out with them. And they felt that she sounded off, and they noticed some changes in her physical appearance as well. So she had lost weight, and she just seemed really exhausted. Her eyes were glassy, and she just no longer was the confident and bubbly woman that she was just the month before. And on September 30th, two of Lauren's friends told staff at the University of Utah dorms that they were concerned about Sean's control over her. They said that he talked about guns frequently and he stayed in her dorm room most nights. So this report and many others filed to housing officials in the next few days were not passed on to campus police or a campus behavioral team who may have intervened. So the housing officials were aware that people were concerned about Lauren's safety, but their focus was on whether or not a housing policy violation had occurred. And so they weren't focusing on, oh, we should do something with this report because they're worried about his behavior and her safety. They're just looking at, was a policy broken? Do I have to do something? Yes or no? The end.
Yeah, and I find it weird because I didn't personally live in a dorm, but all my friends did, like, when we went to UT. And, like, they were pretty strict about, like, people staying over. And especially if, like, a guy was in, like, a girl's dorm. Like, if you were caught with that, like, big trouble. Like, there was some big trouble you could get into if you were caught with, like, little things. Like, even alcohol. It was, like, ooh, big deal here. And, like, men after a certain hour. So I don't understand why, unless this was, like, because she's almost a senior. Maybe it's, like, a more chill dorm or something. But, like, I still feel like they'd be like, yeah, you can't live here. Like, you can't stay here long long term, and you're staying here long term.
Like, this is still campus housing, so there should have been more intervention there, definitely. So in early October, Lauren went home to visit her parents for fall break, and she decided to research her new boyfriend online. So Lauren soon discovered that Sean Fields was actually Melvin Sean Rowland, and he was not 28 years old, but in fact 37 years old, and also a registered sex offender who was on parole.
Big yikes.
So big yikes. That's not what you want to find out when doing a Google search of your boyfriend. So he spent 10 years in prison and was released just a few months before they met. So he was from New York, like he said, but he was adopted by an older couple and then sent to a group home after they passed away. He also spent time in a Buddhist institute in California, then joined the Job Corps and got a job as a certified nursing assistant after taking classes at Salt Lake City Community College. And after spending those 10 years in prison, he did return twice on parole violations for possessing pornography and refusing to complete therapy. And at one parole hearing, he told the board that he dreamed of becoming a doctor, but his, quote, addiction to internet sexual activity had ruined his life.
Okay. All right then.
Yep.
I don't know. I have no comment on that one, but okay.
Nope.
So when Lauren returned to school after fall break, she wasn't sure what to do because she did want to break up with him, but he borrowed her car before she went out of town and he still had it. So things are getting a little complicated. So on October 9th, Lauren asked Alex for advice on what to do, and she suggested asking him to meet in a public place. However, when Lauren hung up the phone with Alex, Rowland busted into her room and yelled at her for talking to other people about their relationship.
So, clearly he was sitting outside listening to this whole conversation, which...
Yeah.
Ew.
Yeah. So she confronted him about his lies and told him she was breaking up with him. And Rowland admitted that he was a sex offender, but denied the age difference. But I'm like, you spent 10 years in prison. How can you be 28? You can't
Exactly.
You can't be 28. He said a 13-year-old girl had tricked him at a fraternity party and told him she was 17. And he said he hadn't done anything wrong and only pleaded guilty because he had to. Which, quit victim blaming, okay?
Yes.
Just stop. Quit trying to make yourself look better. It's not better. You have to be able to tell a 13-year-old from a 17-year-old.
I mean...
Maybe. Mostly. I mean...
Well, I don't know.
Some 13-year-olds these days, they doing their makeup pretty crazy, so...
Well, either way, so if he was in prison for 10 years, let's say he was 26-ish when this crime occurred, so you're still 26 sleeping with a 17-year-old. So still not really okay.
Yeah. But I guess also he was telling her he's 28, so he's saying he was 18, I guess.
Rowland, you weren't 18. We know you weren't 18.
Come on now, dude. We're not stupid. So, Lauren asked him to leave, but he refused and stayed the night at her dorm. And anytime she asked him to leave, he raped her. The next morning, she told him she had to go to track practice, and he left her dorm in her car to run errands.
And FYI, if you look up things about this case online, don't read the comments because there's a lot of fucking assholes in there who are like, why did she let him stay in her dorm? Did you miss the part where he raped her every time that she asked him to leave? Did you miss that part? I saw that comment so many times. And then I also saw the comment of, this is why you shouldn't get so intimately involved with people so quickly. She had only known him for a couple of months and she basically let him live with her. And again, can we stop the victim blaming here? This is ridiculous. I hope you never made a poor choice in your life. And that's not even to say that she was making poor choices. She was just living her life and that's okay. But just no.
And that's the thing too, when Kevin and I started dating, I spent a good number of nights at his apartment.
Yeah.
Because we were adults and we wanted to spend the night together and we were adults and could do that.
Exactly.
So, and I mean, that's the thing. I'm this happens, people do this all the time.
Yeah.
You go and you stay at your significant other's place, frequently. It's not that weird.
Exactly.
So, later that day, she started receiving text messages from an unknown number asking her why she'd broken up with Rowland, saying that he really loved her. No.
Sure he
Rowland.
did.
No, he wanted to control her. There's a difference. The text appeared to be from Rowland's friends, and the next one said he would drop off her car because Rowland couldn't stand to look at her. And another friend told her to go kill herself. And Lauren was pretty sure the texts were from Rowland himself and not a friend, because they were all from a like a spoofed number. I don't know if that's like the right term, but like you could, you can download those apps. Yeah, and like text people
text
from
us any number. Yeah.
So on October 10th, Jill McCluskey, who's Lauren's mother, contacted Campus Dispatch to request a campus security escort to help Lauren get her car from Rowland. So Jill was understandably very upset, very worried. This guy has her car. He's, I don't know if Lauren told her mother about, him raping her or not, but she knew things weren't good. She thinks Lauren definitely needs help getting this car back. Mm-hmm. So the dispatcher contacted Lauren, who declined the service, and she said Rowland was just going to drop the car off outside her apartment, and she felt comfortable with that. I think this is also kind of a woman thing, too, where you're trying to downplay, I think our society has a history of being like, don't be a problem, don't be an issue, and so you're like, no, it's fine, please, you're trying not to make a big deal out of something, you're trying to downplay it a lot,
Yeah, and especially if she thinks, okay, he's not, maybe she thought that he wasn't super dangerous, even though obviously he was in prison for 10 years for sexual assault. But, she thinks okay, maybe I'm overreacting and I show up with security. Then I've turned this into this big deal that it's not. Mm-hmm. And then I'm being dramatic because we all know everyone loves to call women, especially young women, dramatic. And she's just I just don't, especially because she has been such a shy, reserved person most of her life. Yeah. She's I don't want to get into that,
Yeah. And I just want to say that if people try to be well, she declined the security service, but hindsight, people, hindsight.
Yeah.
So the dispatcher said they'd have security officers near the building just in case. And at 5 p.m., Lauren called back and said her car was dropped off at the Rice Eccles Stadium parking lot, and she needed a ride to pick it up, which a security escort provided. So, University police did not learn about Lauren and Jill's concerns until after her death. The security escort was not entered into the same record management system that the campus police use, but there have been, we'll talk about a lot of policy changes after Lauren's death. This is now a thing where they have the same system, they know all of this, which I don't understand how this wasn't a thing before.
Yeah, exactly. You should all be on the same system and have comprehensive records where you know what is happening around campus.
Yeah. So on October 12th, Lauren contacted university police for the first time, reporting that she had received suspicious messages she believed were from Rowland's friends. These new texts said that Rowland was dead and it was her fault. One said he had killed himself, and another said he was in a car accident and she needed to come to the funeral. But she found that he had recently posted on social media, so she knew this wasn't true. And these posts were also a violation of Rowland's parole, which prohibited him from using social media. And I think that's a common thing with sex offenders too, because you find most of your victims on social media.
Especially if he said in his parole hearing that internet sexual activity is what ruined his life. Okay, well, maybe get off the internet then.
Yeah, get off the internet. Go off the grid.
Exactly.
So Lauren said she didn't feel in danger or threatened by the text, but she felt that his friends were trying to lure her out of her dorm. And campus police told her that without explicit threats, there was not much that could be done. I feel like that's a lie. On October 13th at 9:22 a.m., Lauren contacted university police again. She said she'd received a message from Rowland demanding $1,000 in exchange for not posting compromising photos of them on social media. So Lauren panicked because these photos clearly showed her face. They'd ruined her reputation. Everything she'd worked so hard for would just go away basically. If anyone searched her name, these pictures would probably come up.
Yeah, especially someone who's about to graduate and start her life. She knows what the long-term consequences of this could be. So she's I can't deal with this.
Yeah. So she said she did send $1,000 to an account as demanded to keep the photos private. And then over the next few days, she spoke out to Officer Miguel Darris with campus police by phone and in person and text message. And at one point, Officer Darris suggested that it was a scam and Rowland's phone had been hacked. What?
That's not what you think is the first. What?
Yeah, why would that be your first thought? Oh, his phone's been hacked. What? No, he's a piece of shit.
Exactly.
So, he pulled up Rowland's record on the campus directory and said he seemed like a pretty good guy, and he'd only been stopped for a traffic ticket. They would later find out he'd looked up the wrong student who happened to have the same name. So...
Like, come on. Do you guys not have, like, birth dates or any other kind of identifying information?
I feel like, too, like, if you're pulled over for a traffic ticket, they probably look at your ID, but also, like, everyone has to go and get, like, a university ID with a picture, and so, like, wouldn't you just, like, automatically have that in the system, like, probably popped up somewhere?
Well, he wasn't a student there, so I'm not even sure why they looked him up in the campus directory.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if they thought that he was, and I don't know, because he was not a student there.
Yeah, but, like, if you searched and, like, the guy he pulled up, like, wouldn't there be a picture? Or, like, some identifying information? Because, like, I see, like, when people get pulled over, like, by the police, like, they'll put their age, their height, their race, their hair color, their eye color, everything. So I'm like, if you're looking at it and you're like, none of this matches this description. Like,
I'm guessing, like, he didn't show her what he found, that he just told her what he saw, and he didn't actually look at the details, because, as we'll learn, he's not a guy who really gives a shit about the details, or anything, really.
So, Lauren was frustrated with campus police for not acting on this, so she did reach out to the Salt Lake City Police Department, but they referred her back to campus police, saying extortion was under their jurisdiction. I'm like, okay, sure. So, Chief Dale Brophy said police took the report, pulled Rowland's criminal history, but did not learn he was on parole. And I don't know how, because he's like actively on parole, should be actively talking to a parole agent, going to therapy, doing different things. So I really do not understand how this didn't come up, unless you're looking at the wrong person again. I don't know.
Exactly.
But he did assign a detective to follow up on possible charges of sexual extortion.
Oh, good. I'm glad you finally felt it was worthy to have someone assigned to this through the actual police department and not the campus police.
So, a review team later found there was never any attempt by any of the officers involved to check Rowland's offender status. So, further, there were no policies or procedures in place that required such checks. So, it just literally, there was nothing like telling them, hey, search this, or hey, this is a part of protocol. So, they just didn't do it.
Yeah.
On October 16th, a parole agent spoke with Rowland, and the parole agent did not know about Lauren's allegations because university police had not communicated with adult probation and parole. Which, again, it's a simple phone call. Why wouldn't you just call?
Exactly. Why?
So, Rowland's use of social media violated his probation, and involvement in a new crime also would have been a violation and could have sent him back to jail. So, if they would have found out he was on parole and he was being accused of a crime, this whole thing could have been prevented.
Exactly.
On October 19th, Lauren called the Salt Lake City Police Department because the campus police detective assigned to her case still had not contacted her. So Salt Lake City tells her to call campus dispatch. They just keep spinning, like throwing her around, basically.
Like, she's clearly telling you that campus is not doing anything, and you're just like, oh, well, can't help you there. Just got to go back to campus. No.
And my thing is, like, sexual extortion is, like, a severe charge.
Exactly.
So I'm like, how are you saying, like, the university police department, that's their jurisdiction? Like, you can, like, probably, like, throw, like, an override card here. Like...
Yeah. Like, this isn't some, like, oh, he stole my, like, $10 backpack. I don't know. It's not, like, a minor crime. Like, this should be able to be handled by the actual police department.
Yeah. And we've seen in cases before where campus police and city police can work together. We've seen it. It's not impossible. So, Lauren does call the campus dispatch, and she finds out the detective assigned to her case is on vacation and won't be back at work until October 23rd, and to call campus dispatch if she gets another message trying to lure her somewhere. So she's being thrown back and forth, and now she's told, well, there's only one detective who can look at your case, and they're not going to be here for the next 4 to 5 days. So
just, you know, if anything gets worse, I guess call us again, even though you're calling us every day because things are getting worse.
Yeah.
Clearly.
So, in the following days, security video footage shows Rowland at various campus locations, apparently seeking out Lauren. And over that weekend, Lauren sent 3 screenshots to campus police showing Rowland's criminal history and offender details. So she's doing their fucking job for them. She's like, look, clearly he is on parole. He's a sexual offender. I got you the information you need.
Like, help me.
Yeah. So Alex remembers that her and Lauren went out that night and she was very stressed out. At one point she said hopefully one day when she was married to a nice guy, she'd look back on the situation and laugh.
That part just broke my heart, because at 21 years old, you're not expecting this to go the way that it does. You're like, oh, this is going to be a crazy ex-boyfriend story, you know?
Yeah. And that's the thing with this case too, is I have kind of a toxic, crazy ex-boyfriend. And so it was very just I don't know, eerie to me to think how lucky I was and how this could have gone so wrong. And it was just
yes.
certain details of the case, it's just it hit really close to home. So it was really,
you're oh shit, this could have been me.
Yeah. It's just sad and horrible. So on October 22nd at 10:39 a.m., Lauren talked to Officer Darris after she received another text from a spoofed number with the message claiming to be from Deputy Chief Rick McLean. Sorry, Rick. Asking her to go to the police station. So Lauren believed it was actually from Rowland trying to get her to leave her dorm. And I also want to say impersonating a police officer is a crime.
Exactly.
Even if you're just sending a text message, it's a crime.
You can't do that. This isn't... the previous text messages were bad enough where you're okay, something is going on here. But this is a legit... you have no reason to not follow up with this.
Yeah. But Darris never reported Lauren's concerns to any of his supervisors at the department. And between 3 and 6 p.m., Rowland was seen waiting for Lauren with some of her friends at the dorms. At 8:20 p.m., Rowland confronted Lauren in the parking lot of her residence hall. So Lauren was returning from her night class and was on the phone with her mother. And Jill said Lauren was telling her about a good grade. She got on a quiz and she had a big assignment coming up due at midnight that she needed to go finish. And Jill said she did sound upbeat and positive. Lauren said, "I love you, Mom," while wrapping up the call. And then Jill heard Lauren scream, "No, no, no." And the line went quiet. So Rowland had grabbed her. She dropped her cell phone and belongings. And then he dragged her into a different spot in the lot, forcing her into the back seat of a car he'd driven to campus. Once she was in the car, Rowland shot Lauren multiple times. At 8:23 p.m., Matt, Lauren's father, called campus dispatch and told them what Jill had heard on the phone and asked officers to respond. And at first, her parents believed she'd been in a car accident, but then they were just sure that Rowland had something to do with it.
And I just cannot even imagine being the mom and you're on the phone with your child when she's grabbed like that.
Yeah.
You heard the final moments of her life, and that is just so haunting. That's something you can never come back from, you know?
Yeah.
So at 8:32 p.m., police went to the parking lot and found Lauren's belongings. So more police were called and a search began of her dorm, the parking lot, and the surrounding area. At 8:38 p.m., Rowland called a woman that he had met on a dating app and asked her to come pick him up. They then went to dinner at a restaurant, drove by the state capitol, and went to her home downtown where he took a shower, claiming he had worked out before their date. She then dropped him off at a coffee shop, and later that evening, she saw news reports about the shooting, and she recognized photos of Rowland and called the police. Then at 9:55, police found Lauren's body in the backseat of the car, and I saw some reports that it was her car, and then I saw some reports that just said a car, so I'm not completely sure if he was still driving her car at the time, or if he got a different car, so...
Yeah, it's kind of conflicting, whose car for sure it was.
So, just wanted to point that out there, that she may have been murdered in her own car, we're not sure. At 9:56, a secure-in-place alert was sent campus-wide, telling the university community that there had been a shooting.
Which I was also thinking, we know exactly what it was at this point, but if you were on campus and you received an alert that there was basically an active shooter, and you didn't know any other information, that must have been terrifying for the whole university.
Right?
This is 2018. We know school shootings happen way too frequently, way too regularly. And I was just thinking about that. If I was on campus and received, there's been a shooting, and there's an active suspect out, and it's how terrifying it must be to just not know.
So a couple years ago, when Andrew was a student, he, the campus, I guess they were testing their text alerts or whatever, but they didn't tell people they were testing them. So the whole campus got a text message that there was an active shooter when there really wasn't.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
That's horrible.
And, thank God Andrew was home that day, because he had, like, he only had classes, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or whatever, and it was one of his off days. So, like, he got the message and was like, oh my gosh. And, and then it was like, I don't know, maybe like 5 or 10 minutes later when they sent out like oh, we're so sorry, this was a mistake. So it wasn't like too long, but still, like, if you're in campus, like, that's a long time, for that. And I was like, I'm just really glad he wasn't like there to like text me and be like, hey, I just got this alert.
Yeah.
And then I'm like wondering. So yeah, make sure that, you send a message first that you're going to test this before you do that.
Yeah, because that's the thing too. Like, when I was on campus, like, I thought about that too. Like, what would we do if an active shooter was here? And I mean, that's like a horrible thing. Like, you have to like think about and like plan for. But like, how terrifying it must have just been, like, this late at night to be like, I don't know, I don't want to go out. I don't want to. You don't know what you're going to come across. And it is like a little bit before they like fully explain.
Yeah. And if you're already out, it's like, do I go to my dorm or do I not? Like, where is this happening? Where am I safest? Do I just leave campus completely? But then you have a lot of people that don't have cars. Just like so stressful.
Yeah, because that's what I was thinking about when I read it. Like, how scary it must have been for those people who like didn't know what was going on.
Yeah. So at 10:09, an alert was sent with the suspect's information, and updates were sent about every 30 minutes after that. At 11:46, an alert lifting the secure-in-place order was sent after University police determined that Rowland had left the campus, and at 12:01, an alert was sent identifying the suspect as Melvin Rowland. At 12:46, Salt Lake City police found Rowland and followed him on foot, and he entered the Trinity AME Church. As police entered the church, Rowland fatally shot himself. And at 1:47 a.m., an alert was sent saying that Rowland had been located and was no longer a threat. The next day, on October 23rd, University Chief Police Dale Brophy told reporters that his officers could not find Rowland the days before the shooting. However, a later review would show that no one had been looking for him, so clearly you're not going to find him if you weren't even looking for him. And he also incorrectly stated that Rowland had walked away from a halfway house, which was not true. So the university did later correct that statement. On October 24th, the Department of Corrections revealed that a parole agent had spoken with Rowland on the 16th, but had no knowledge of Lauren's calls to the police. So, like, she has been calling repeatedly about this guy to the police department, to the campus police, and his parole officer had no idea about it.
Yeah.
So that same night, the campus community did come together for a vigil to honor Lauren. On October 25th, a press conference was held and revealed to the public how Rowland had extorted Lauren days before her murder and how he had stalked her on campus for at least 3 days prior to murdering her and spent 3 hours in her dorm room before the shooting. And it was also revealed that the man who loaned Rowland the gun contacted police after seeing media reports. University of Utah President Ruth Watkins announced that she would be launching a review by an outside investigator to evaluate university protocols, but the review would not examine the decisions of individual officers.
So,
which just goes back to how all police officers need to be held accountable.
Yes.
The end. So the governor, Gary Herbert, also announced that he ordered an investigation as well of Utah Department of Corrections and the Board of Parole to look into possible mistakes. And another investigation was also being opened since Rowland was hired under the alias Sean Fields to be a bouncer at the club. And the state said that the company never did a background check before hiring him. So more of Rowland's past came out at this time as well. And in 2004, he attempted sexual assault on a teenage girl. In a 2012 parole hearing, he admitted to raping the teen and 2 other women. And in 2016, he threatened that, quote, if an agent were to come conduct a field visit, he might become violent. He was also suspected, but never charged, with burglarizing 2 women he dated in 2015. He had a few parole violations, including having a dating app, testing positive for marijuana, and missing some of his counseling appointments, but he overall had high remarks in his parole record.
My thing is, like, you had all these parole violations, but you still had high remarks. Like, okay, he was just charming you. Like,
yeah. On October 27th, 2 women came forward telling the Salt Lake Tribune that Rowland had a pattern of lying and manipulating, and that he frequently lied about his age and criminal record. So this is not the first time that he had done this. And then on November 2nd, Ruth Watkins said that the review would now evaluate the decisions made by individual officers leading up to Lauren's murder. And the reviews came back on December 19th. The University Police's report, quote, does not offer any reason to believe that Lauren's murder could have been prevented. Instead, it provides weaknesses, identifies issues, and provides us with a roadmap for strengthening security on campus. That is a direct quote from this bitch, not gonna lie.
Yeah.
So clearly there were multiple significant missed opportunities, like all of the reports from her friends to housing officials when the detective assigned to Lauren's case was on vacation and it was not given to another detective, just the many times that they didn't call her back. What?
Yeah.
So it also stated that the review believed the Department of Safety was understaffed and they needed to hire a victim advocate and form better networks and communication. I mean, that would be a fucking start, but there were plenty of other issues that would not have assisted with. So on December 20th, her parents Matt and Jill spoke out about the assertion that Lauren's death could not have been prevented and believed that the officers should be disciplined. So they were really frustrated by the lack of action, and so on January 25th, 2019, they did go on ABC's Good Morning America to talk about their daughter, and they called for discipline again and said they were considering a lawsuit. Then on February 7th, a Utah lawmaker drafted a bill that was prompted by Lauren's death. She called for Utah's public colleges to develop detailed response plans for cases of sexual assault, stalking, and dating and domestic violence, with an emphasis on training officers on how to recognize the warning signs. So her dad Matt did testify on this bill, and Governor Gary Herbert signed it into law on March 29th. On February 12th, Watkins announced that the school made significant changes to ensure student safety. They increased training for officers to recognize warning signs of domestic and dating violence. They updated policies, created new task forces, and shared information across campus, including sending safety reports from housing staff to police. And she repeated that the officers would not be disciplined because she believed everyone, quote, acted in good faith.
And that's the thing, too, is, obviously, and we'll get more into some of the things the officers did that, wasn't exactly right or good, but, people mess up. And so I'm even if it's they weren't intentionally trying to mess up, or they had acted in good faith, well, they still messed up, and you still have to be disciplined for that. If you fuck up, you have to be disciplined. At my job, if I make an error, even if it's an accident, I have to fill out a whole freaking PDF about it and what I did and how I'm going to fix it. But a police officer who probably could have prevented this, they just don't have any discipline at all.
Yeah. So Matt and Jill wanted the man who let Rowland borrow the gun to be punished as well. So Rowland had asked a friend to borrow his gun to take his new girlfriend to a shooting range. Obviously, as a felon, he was unable to possess his own gun. So he paid his friend Nathan Vogel $200 to borrow the gun. And Nathan said he called and texted Rowland for days after trying to get his gun back, but Rowland wouldn't respond to him. And Vogel later said that this led him to believe that the murder was premeditated because he had the gun for days, weeks, and was clearly planning on using it for something. So another bill was presented that addressed this on February 20th, and it would open the way for lawsuits against individuals who borrowed firearms that are used in a felony. But this did not pass in 2019 or in 2020 when it was brought up again.
Yeah, and Matt and Jill were very I want this guy punished, over and over. So I think that was kind of a hard blow for them.
Yeah. So on March 7th, the detective assigned to Lauren's case, Kayla Dalliff, left the university's police department, and the Tribune later learned that she had been fired after making similar mistakes on another female student's case. So a 17-year-old girl had reported that a male student had threatened her, and he trapped her in his room and then left her a voicemail saying he was going to kill her after she was able to get out. So Dalliff left work for the weekend without taking any action in this situation. Friday at 5, all right, gotta go. Yep. Hope you'll be okay. So on March 13th, federal charges were brought against Nathan Daniel Vogel, the man who loaned his gun to Rowland, and it turned out that Vogel had a friend buy a gun for him in September 2018 because he didn't think he could get one after being generally discharged from the Army. So he was charged with unlawfully purchasing the weapon, and he pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 3 years supervised probation.
Yeah, and on June 5th, the University of Utah's police department held an awards ceremony honoring employees on how they responded to Lauren's concerns before her murder and media questions after death. What?
This just made me sick to my stomach. Yeah. I'm just how dare you? how dare you? Like,
she died. Like, you didn't prevent it.
You won't even acknowledge the mistakes that you made, and then you have a fucking ceremony for these fucking nitwits? Are you kidding me?
Yeah. And they celebrated a dispatcher and 2 administrators, despite the review that found several staffers mishandled her case. So obviously, Matt and Jill were not happy. They said the honors seemed disrespectful and out of touch. Matt even said it was borderline obscene, which I agree with. Like, that is horrible. And the department later apologized to the McCluskys for including their name in the program. Not for having the program.
That's what they apologized
Just
for.
including their name.
Yeah.
So, on June 27th, Lauren's parents filed a $56 million lawsuit against the university. So, they alleged that campus police could have prevented Lauren's murder and that the school's president was irresponsible in insisting otherwise. And Jill and Matt really said it was just a last resort. Like, they wanted an apology. They never got one. They wanted the officers at the school fired or at least disciplined and to talk with the president to remedy the situation, but she just never responded to their emails. So Lauren basically died, and they were just like, okay, bye-bye, sorry, can't talk to you, can't be bothered. And so the lawsuit was also filed against Officer Darris, Detective Dalloff, the university, and the state, which funds the university. It also named then campus police chief Dale Brophy and officials in the housing department. And it said the university just refused to respond, and that made it liable. And it said Lauren, her family, and friends reached out more than 20 times to report concerns. And the biggest aspect of the complaint was they failed to follow the Title IX, the federal law that requires schools to swiftly investigate reports of sexual violence and provide services to individuals who report discrimination or violence. So, if you're not already mad, just get prepared to be more mad. I'm just gonna trigger warning, you're gonna be mad. So, on July 1st, Officer Darris was disciplined for mishandling a female student's request. So he was assigned to respond to a call in February where a domestic assault incident occurred in married campus housing. So Darris went to talk to the woman and provide her information about how to report assault by a partner. When he arrived, the suspect was still there, and he let the man stay while he interviewed the woman. So you're interviewing the woman in front of her attacker.
What is wrong with you? Have you been trained for 5 minutes of your life? Like,
yeah. And I think I remember too, the Generation Y podcast brought up that when Lauren came to talk about like the sexual extortion case, like Darris just talked to her like in the lobby. Like he didn't even take her back to like a room. He was just like, we're going to talk here out in front of everybody. And it's like, what?
Yeah.
What?
That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works, Officer Darris.
And he didn't call for backup, which the police department did require for cases involving fights or abuse between partners when both parties are present. So you also just didn't follow protocol. He also did not check if the suspect was on parole, even after the man said he attempted to call his parole agent in his presence. So the guy's like, I'm trying to call my parole agent. And the guy's like, oh, cool. I'm not going to check if you're on parole. I don't know.
I'm not going to do anything about that. I got to get to my 6 o'clock dinner, so see you later.
Yeah, Darris knew he fucked up. He accepted the warning without appeal, and it was just placed in his file.
But he's still working and doing his thing, so, you know.
Dale Brophy then retired amid the turmoil with Lauren's case. So Brophy received a severance package that included a year of pay. His salary was $151,000 and benefits. His retirement package also qualified for his retirement to be paid for by the state. Then the school threw him a retirement party that cost $6,000.
Y'all, my heart is pounding. Like, I'm so angry.
Yeah.
Reading this. I've read this before, obviously, when we were doing the research, hearing it. This blows my mind. What is wrong with this university?
Yeah, they're so oblivious. Like, I don't understand. A retirement party that costs $6,000 and he's retiring because of like this whole case, and he just gets his severance pay and he gets his benefits and he gets to live his happy little life.
Yep.
So more university policy changes followed shortly after. Professors were required to include the campus police phone number on documents and to direct students to call that number if needed. And a $1 million investment went to improving like building alarms, having police patrol outside of night classes, and creating a new transportation system. Then, on September 17th, Officer Darris resigned from the police department. And on September 21st, the university responded to the lawsuit saying that while it was heartbreaking, the officers had no obligation to protect Lauren from her attacker. But I'm like, isn't that the police's job?
Isn't that what you do? Isn't that why you're paid? I'm sorry, I must have misunderstood the police department's role in society.
Yeah, I guess it's just to give traffic tickets. And arrest people for having weed. You're beating your girlfriend? It's fine. You've weed?
That's fine. We don't care about that.
Yep. The school's attorney said Rowland had no association with the university, and the university cannot be responsible for his actions, but it's happening on your university. Like, this is your jurisdiction. Like, the Salt Lake City Police Department was like, we can't come here because that's their jurisdiction, and now they're like, well, it's not our fault because he's not at the university. So it's like, what?
And there were tons of reports. It's not like this happened and people are like, oh, how dare you not be a mind reader and know that this was happening and do something. Like, there were plenty of reports to multiple departments by multiple people. There's no reason for this to have not been followed up on.
And a literal crime happened twice. The sexual extortion and the pretending to be a police officer. It's not like you didn't have motive to act on. It's not like, well, you're getting these text messages, we can't prove who it's from. Like, that's shitty, but that's a little bit more like kind of murky water. But literally there were actual like illegal things happening you could have acted on.
Yeah.
So obviously, people are not happy. There is immediately caused backlash, and many were like, the university is just victim blaming. They're like, this is just Lauren's fault. It's not our fault. And on September 26th, student leaders at the university condemned the administration, criticizing how it handled Lauren's fears, denied responsibility for her murder, and created an atmosphere in which students worry campus police won't protect them. So it's like the first time the student government like put forth this kind of statement. So now it's like, okay, even your students are like calling you out.
And I mean, imagine being a student at that university. I mean, like, clearly I can't trust this campus police to keep me safe.
Yeah. So on October 21st, nearly 100 students, mostly women, staged a protest and walked out of class. The groups then stood outside the university's administration building and carried signs saying, "Where were you when Lauren needed you?" And they put the letter U. And this is because the University of Utah is frequently called like just the U. So President Watkins said that Lauren's murder revealed problems on campus. Bit of an understatement, don't you think?
Like, what?
This girl died so that we could just see our problems. Like, what?
Oh, yeah, well.
So, on November...
We can make some improvements. Okay.
We put in a new, like, camera, a new security camera, guys. Don't you feel
some
safe?
Transportation things. It gave us a roadmap for how we can fuck off. What is your name?
Ruth.
Ruth, I think.
Ruth Watkins. So on November 3rd, the Tribune released an investigative report detailing the culture of the university's police department. So they just found countless cases where police just downplayed domestic violence calls and basically just did not believe or help women in need. And it's like, it's not, Lauren was not the exception. She was the rule.
Yeah.
This was like, it wasn't like, oh, this one time it slipped through the cracks. It's like revealing like, no, this is like how it is.
Lauren was the time that finally brought it to light of everything else.
Yeah. Then on February 4th, 2020, another bill inspired by Lauren's case was drafted by the Utah Senate. It aimed to improve how Utah universities respond to sexual assault and strengthen coordination between on-campus and off-campus law enforcement, and it was signed into law. Then on May 17th, it was released by the Tribune that Officer Darris showed explicit pictures of Lauren to a coworker before her murder. So, this inappropriate behavior wasn't known until after he left, and he did leave September 2019. So, according to two fellow officers, Darris showed off at least one of the images to a male coworker, and Darris also bragged about getting to see the photos whenever he wanted.
You are disgusting.
So this girl is coming to you and having to embarrassingly show you pictures. Like, how horrific it must be to be like, I have to give you these pictures he's threatening me with. And then you're going around like, look at her. Haha, look. Like, fuck you, dude. Like, seriously.
Look how cute this 21-year-old is. I'm not going to do anything about her concerns or, anything about the guy that's doing this to her, but I have time to show off her photo and talk about how hot she is.
Yeah. And at this time, lawmakers proposed bills to address officers handling sensitive information and setting up rules to punish those who abuse it, which, how the fuck did it take 2020 to just suddenly introduce this bill? Like, what?
Oh, yeah, maybe this should be a thing.
Maybe this should be a thing. Oh, my God.
I'm pretty sure any job where you handle sensitive information, you have to sign things about the sensitive information that you handle. Are police officers the exception to this rule?
Every year I have to sign a document saying I will not release information. And, like, I handle people's, like, names, date of birth, social security. Is like, if it's literally come out that I somehow compromised that information or gave that information to someone, because my email's on my phone, they can literally factory reset my phone. Mm-hmm. Like, and all I'm doing is doing background checks, and these people are supposed to be protecting people.
And Courtney would immediately be fired, and that would be the end of that.
Yeah. So,
but that doesn't happen for police.
So, on May 20th, back to kind of the lawsuit, they had 2 days planned deliberation, but a settlement could not be reached. And then on June 6th, students protested against the police department, citing Lauren's case. So they called for defunding the police. And this is, around the time a lot of the nationwide protests were occurring, especially against, police, discrimination of people of color, all that. So the students really were like, look, you guys keep fucking up. And they started their protest against them.
Yeah.
On June 8th, the McCluskys filed a second lawsuit against the university in state court. So, on June 29th, the University of Utah announced it was overhauling its police department, requiring more public reporting of misconduct, hiring a new command staff to oversee officers, and devoting a division to victim services with a focus on sexual violence. How are you just now having this again? So this had been the biggest move in response to Lauren's death. Like, finally, it's like maybe a little bit of leeway is coming or a little bit of movement. Mm-hmm. It also came after a survey that showed students' trust in officers was significantly down. So in spring of 2018, the majority of students said they trusted that the university did enough to protect the students. So when the same question was asked a year later, less than half responded they did. So basically, it is just like, it went from majority to less than half being like, we don't trust you. We don't trust that we're safe. We don't trust that if something happened, we could come to you. So on August 5th, reports were released regarding Darris, and it was proven that he showed off the images. But other officers also admitted to making crude comments saying, oh, you're so lucky to work with her. She's so cute. Ugh. Which is disgusting. This is this whole, like, boys will be boys, locker room talk. No, that's not okay at all. No. 0%. On another occasion, Darris showed a sergeant one of the nude photos of Lauren while they were at the scene of the crime the night she was murdered.
Yes. The night she was murdered.
Yeah.
He's showing off her nude photos.
Yes. And it was after the sergeant said, I wonder what she looked like. Now, I don't know if he was saying, like, in general her face and not necessarily her nude body, or if he's talking about her nude body. I don't really know how the sergeant said this, but whatever it was, Darris was like, I have a nude photo of her.
Yeah, do you want to see this?
Like, this is clearly just a whole department filled with toxicity after multiple officers participated in these crude comments about a victim. Like, you're a sergeant and you see one of your officers showing off a nude picture and you're just like, okay, cool.
Which just goes back to the whole problem of, like, this is a widespread problem. It's not a few bad apples, which, if you guys forget the saying, it's a few bad apples spoils the whole bunch. It's the people that are okay with this kind of behavior and do nothing about it. Like, that's part of the problem. Also, why does it fucking matter what she looked like? Yeah. Like, this isn't a case where you don't know who she is, so you're like, oh, is there any way we can, like, reconstruct her face? Like, you know exactly who this is. Why does it matter what she looked like? Why is that even a question that you are asking? Would you be asking that question if it was a male gunshot victim? Probably fucking not.
Yeah. So it's just like, I don't understand. And obviously multiple officers saw him, heard him. Either no one came forward or no one was taken seriously with their concerns. Anyway. It was also reported that Darris downloaded these pictures to his personal phone, but this couldn't be confirmed. Basically, Darris had gotten a new phone after Lauren was killed, so much of that data was corrupted. And I think I also read that his email, his like work email, was on his personal phone. So if he had those like pictures in his email, it would be on his personal phone. So it got kind of muddy about what exactly. 3 officers were fired for not reporting this sooner. So, of course, students keep protesting, specifically calling out Darris. And after Darris had left the university police department, he did go to work for another police department, and he was fired from that police department. So, thankfully, they're like, okay, no, out of here. Bye-bye. So, September 22nd, the university opened a new center for violence prevention that was founded to research intimate partner violence. And on October 15th, Salt Lake County District Attorney Sim Gill announced that they weren't prosecuting Darris. He believes his actions were reckless, but there's no Utah law for this type of police misconduct. You can't just do general police misconduct?
I have no words.
Yeah.
I have no words.
So a lot of people were upset, especially Jill and Matt. Completely understandable. I'm upset. We're all upset. And a large number of protests did happen around Gill's office. This was only a few months ago. I don't know if maybe he'll change his mind, but I highly doubt it. Like, if he's coming out, I mean, I don't know. On October 22nd, 2020, for the first time, the university admits Lauren's death could have been prevented. They agreed they could have protected her better and failed. They agreed to pay Jill and Matt $13.5 million, and the announcement came on the 2nd anniversary of Lauren's death. So the school is also building an indoor track and naming it after Lauren. And with this new facility, Jill said that she really believes Lauren will always have a presence on the campus. Her name will always be remembered. And additionally, the new Center for Violence Prevention will also bear her name. And that is the horrible, infuriating, just tragic, could have been prevented death of Lauren McCluskey.
Yeah, I don't think we need to spend too much time recapping our thoughts, because I feel like we did that a lot during this story, because
we were pretty open.
It's just impossible not to comment about just the overall misconduct and just reprehensible behavior that was allowed to continue, and it's just so awful. And like we said in the very beginning, like, her death was completely all murders are preventable, but this one was preventable in many ways that no one protected her, no one took her seriously, and no one helped her when they could have, and it's just terrible.
Yeah, and I mean, thankfully there have been new laws and new bills and new, trying to have better communication, but it's just so horrible that Lauren had to lose her life for these to come into place. Like, it's just like her name is hopefully being remembered well. They did name things after her. She has many bills in her name. Like, it's literally kind of like reconstructing the whole system, but it is just absolutely tragic that it had to take this young girl losing her life for that to happen.
And it took 2 years for them to admit that they could have done something. So it's like, did you not believe it? Were you just trying to save face and be like, oh no, we can just keep putting this off even though you knew you were wrong? But these policies were changed, but it took 2 years for you to be like, oh yeah, I guess we could have done something. Like, you think? It's just terrible all around.
It is. And like we said, like Jaclyn said, with comments on news articles of just like people being horrible, like, please just don't be horrible on the internet. Like, have some like fucking compassion, and like, don't like, nobody deserves to lose their life. Like, nobody. Do not victim blame. No. Like, don't. Just please just stop and just be like a good person in the world, and like, treat people how you want to be treated. Like, be kind, be compassionate. Like, this year has, like, fucking sucked for a lot of people. And just all we need in the world is just to be a little kinder to each other.
I just don't understand, like, in your free time, why do you want to go to the internet and bash other people about whatever it may be? Like, why is that how you like to spend your free time?
It's because people, they get the comfort of knowing they can type behind a keyboard and they won't be punched in the face. People might respond telling them that they're an idiot, but they can just brush that off and keep going. But there's just, like, no repercussions for, like, what they say, what they do. And they just feel strong because nobody can touch them. But they're probably living miserable lives, and it's more a reflection on them than anything else.
Exactly. So, to sum it up, be nice on the internet and also in person to people, because why not? So, Courtney, what is your perk of the week?
Okay, let's try and lighten this up here. So, my perk of the week is I found a new podcast that I really enjoy, and I want to tell you guys about it. It's called Affirmative Murder. Have you listened to it?
Oh, I haven't heard of it. Mm-mm.
So basically, Jensen and Holes have been releasing like their fall distraction that they had like on Stitcher Premium, and these guys were on there, and they were like, "Yeah, like we're from Baltimore." I'm like, "Ooh, Baltimore is where Kevin's family lives," and they were like funny and all that, and I was like, "I'm gonna go listen to their podcast because you gotta represent." And they're basically huge My Favorite Murder fans. Like their whole podcast was inspired by My Favorite Murder. And so, yeah, they just sit down each week. Each of them takes a case and they kind of like talk in the beginning and they have like a good vibes thing at the end. Each episode is like 2 hours, so it's going to take me a long time to catch up. But they're just super funny, just really well researched. They just have like a great dynamic, and it's different than like the podcast I usually listen to, and they usually focus mostly on cases of people of color, and so it's usually cases I haven't heard as much about. So I've really been enjoying them, and I just kind of wanted to give them like a shout out. I know they probably have more listeners than we do, but maybe some people out there will go listen and go give them some love. So
very nice. That sounds good. I'll have to check them out for sure.
Yeah, they're really funny. Like the first episode I listened to, I was like literally laughing out loud because they were just so funny. I was like, okay, if I'm on the first episode and I'm laughing, like, it's a good sign.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so that is my perk of the week. Jaclyn, what is your perk of the week?
So my perk of the week, so as you guys know, I've been moving, so things have been hectic, and, we moved right before Christmas, so I wanted to hurry up and get my Christmas decorations up so I could enjoy those for a brief amount of time. But last night, I finally got some downtime for the first time in, I don't know, like 2 weeks, because literally as soon as I would finish working, it was like, okay, well, let me pack this stuff up, or I would work on the podcast stuff, or then I was like making loads of stuff over to the new house, and then we've been unpacking everything here and then putting up the decorations and, still just trying to get things organized and just been so busy. And then finally last night I'm like, I don't have anything to do right now. So I finally got caught up on the podcast stuff that I had been neglecting, so we finally kind of got that taken care of. And then I was like, I'm gonna watch a movie. And I was actually listening to Morbid recently, and Ash mentioned that Gone Girl was on Amazon, so I was like, oh, let me go watch it. It was for rent for $4. I'm not about to spend $4 to watch a movie. And so I texted Courtney, and then Courtney's like, oh, I just looked and it's on Hulu. And I was like, you're the best. So then I went on Hulu and I watched Gone Girl and had some pizza and just relaxed, and it was nice to just have a moment to do nothing. So
Kevin loves that movie. That's like one of his favorite movies.
It's a really good movie. And if you guys haven't read the movie, if you guys have not read the book or watched the movie, you should do both of those. Always read the book first, because the book's always better.
Honestly,
but they're both super good.
This doesn't happen often, but I can remember reading Gone Girl and sitting there and turning the page and being like, what?
Yes.
You know how people always ask if you could what book could you erase from your memory that you could go back and read again? It would be Gone Girl, because she wrote that to perfection. And after that, so many people tried to do the whole Gone Girl thing. It was never as good. It was perfect. The way she wrote it was absolute perfection.
Yes, oh my gosh, so good. I agree. That's what, I think everyone, remembers, where they were when they were reading that part of Gone Girl, because it's just, stuck in your memory.
You turn the page and you're just like, what?
Wait, what?
I was, flipping back, and I was like, did I miss... What? What? And then I was like, oh my God. Like, it was incredible.
Yes. So good.
Now I'm going to have to reread Gone Girl soon.
So yeah, if you guys want to talk to us about Gone Girl or other books, movies, give us suggestions, you can do so on Instagram at Caffeinated Crimes Pod. You can do so on Twitter at Caff Crimes Pod. That's CAFF Crimes Pod. You can find us on Facebook at Caffeinated Crimes Podcast. You can email us at caffeinatedcrimespod@gmail.com. Again, if you guys want to head on over to patreon.com/caffeinatedcrimes, you can get some more of the bonus episodes like you guys got to hear last week. You can come have a Google Hangout and we can talk about Gone Girl or anything else, or Q&As or whatever. We can do all those things on Patreon.
Yeah, and we have, a few more episodes up there. We're trying, hopefully the new year will be less busy. We can get more bonus content out there, get you guys a little bit more sucked in to want to go. But also, if you are still wanting a pin, a sticker, a gift card to the coffee shop of your choice, you can still win. We are still waiting on those Apple reviews. Once we get to 50, we will draw a person's name and they'll get those goodies. We would really love for you to review us. It really helps people find us. Maybe one day we could get a few sponsors, all that. So if you guys could just give us that love, it'll take like 2 minutes of your time, I promise. And just do that on any phone you have. Like we'll put your name in like 4 times if you have like 4 family members who have different phones. But in the meantime, go have a cup of coffee.
And don't commit a crime.